Hey, good afternoon, Jeff. How you doing today?
Good.
Good. I'm pretty stoked about our guest today. In the green room, I saw that he came pretty well prepared for being in the hot seat. I think there was a fire extinguisher and a Target bag involved, so we'll have to have him explain his his preparations when he gets on. So, welcome everybody to episode 4 of In the Hot Seat. What is In the Hot Seat? Well, every 2 weeks, we engage with industry experts and customers for a lively discussion, debate, even some discourse as we humanize the digital experience. All aspects of the customer lifecycle are up for discussion. You're going to see several of them today, including education, awareness, acquisition, impact, and retention, as well as technologies that are used in each phase of the journey. That would include CRM, marketing automation, support case management, logistics supply chain, which happens to be Jeff's area of expertise. This is the 4th episode in our 5-part series themed Experience the Engagement. And just a little note to our users who are using LinkedIn. If you are using LinkedIn to stream us live, you may have some cycling issues. So if you do, please head on over to Facebook or YouTube. The experience there is flawless, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes.
Hopefully, right. So, Jeff, you and I were talking a little bit on Friday about all of the customer successing that Josh has written about and how we need to define what it is based on where you fall in the industry. Where does that value chain start?
Well, I think, in my opinion, especially coming from an operations supply chain background, to define customer success, or what he calls customer successing, you first have to define your customer, um, figure out what success means to them, because I think a lot of times it gets lost in everything. Everybody's worried about their own metrics, their own, and rightly so. Every company should look out for its own people, its own stakeholders, but one of those stakeholders has got to be your customer base, and to truly be successful. So um, we can kind of go back, if you want to go back, old school, just a production company, and how Michael Porter set up, a concept of value chain, and all the way back in like '85. Um, if Brent could pull up that chart for people that haven't seen it, it kind of shows everything, inbound operations, outbound, all the way to your distribution channels, your sales and service, and then you got your back office stuff, your purchasing, technology development, your HR, things companies need to run. And this is for basically a production company, back in the 80s. But it still holds true for a lot of it, especially in product development. So what you have to realize, as these supply chains get more complex, you may have 4 or 5 of these charts strung together, each one pointing at the next. And where you fall in that, kind of depends on what value you're adding, what your customers, view as successful, what you should view as successful for, customer engagement. And especially me, in a customer's mind, the supply chain starts at their front door, or whoever uses it. That arrow should always point at an end consumer somewhere. And as the supply chains become supply networks through outsourcing, things like that, your human resource, your technology development. I mean, some of these things are outsourced, and become a big network. So understanding where you fall in, and even your marketing sales, a lot of times, I mean, I hire marketing firms all the time. So what they view as their operation, how does it fit into that whole chain, to the end consumer, and what value are you adding there? So I think you kind of have to figure out where you're at. And you brought up an interesting point when we were talking last week, that technology service companies, especially with the Internet of Things,
Yeah.
it doesn't always apply that way. Maybe technology development is your production, and that's it. So
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for other companies, like SAP, their technology development is their product, and their customers may be Johnson Control, Visteon,
Yeah.
Nissan, Ford, whoever, but you still have to understand that the value you add is not the final. It's whoever drives that car every day, and what value you're adding to that as far as being able to create the whole thing. So it gets very complex, and and that's why people a lot more dedicated and most times a lot smarter than me do it, every day.
Well, I thought it was interesting. Our friends Thomas Weavernight and Marshall Lager over at Ahead CRM, they did a post not too long ago on customer success teams being set up as a reaction to failing implementation projects, or even worse, a vehicle for selling further services to customer companies. And I thought that was a really interesting perspective. And Josh's article also alludes to that customer successing. So it's going to be, I think, an interesting conversation with Josh. I think we should get him on here and hear what he has to say.
Yeah, so let's bring in our guest,
There we are.
Greenbaum, who has over 30.
I'm in the hot seat, and I've got my fire extinguisher. I am ready. This is it's the thing. I'm gonna pull the pin and start shooting if we get. No, I'm kidding.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You got a long history, as a writer, as a consultant. You work with in ERP systems and.
What the hell am I? Yeah, I've been doing this for a long time. In fact, I look at that your Michael Porter chart, 1985. That's pretty much when I got involved in the tech industry, and I've been kind of there ever since. I've been following the enterprise software space in particular as a focus of mine, pretty much since the early 90s. Oracle Financials was kind of the first sort of thing we could point at. SAP R3, I was there for the launch of that, and I've been ever since then kind of trying to bridge this gap between engineering and humans, between business and technology, and I'm really there to try to take the big picture. So I would say if you're looking for someone to do a bake-off feature functionality between two pieces of software, that's not really me. If you're looking at how do I fix my supply chain problem in the context of this big, heterogeneous, complex environment I'm in, how do I get all the stakeholders involved? How do I navigate the complex pieces of technology infrastructure, business outcomes, intended business outcomes? I'm more that guy who can really help you have that big picture. So I'm a big picture guy, mile wide or an inch deep, all over the place. I don't know. How did I do? I get that covered?
And you are by far the most well-prepared guest we've had on the show yet. So
because I've been, I don't know if you can see this, I've been sitting here with a target on my back all week, getting ready. So hit me. What do you got?
Well, you talk a lot about customer success and some of your blogs, some of your articles, you talk about customer successing. Back to the base, where does customer success start? Is it a specific department? Within a company, within any firm, where would you say customer success starts?
Well, and I'll start with saying, what the hell is success anyway? And particularly when you're looking at customer success, is really, you're talking about the success of an engagement. Something happened between a customer and a vendor, hopefully, and a service partner that resulted in something. And I like to say, success is really. Success has as many definitions as there are participants and perspectives. And you can sort of boil this down to essential human relations, right? Two people in a relationship, they both say it's a successful relationship. Put them in separate rooms and say, what's success? And hopefully they agree on a whole bunch of stuff, but they're going to probably have different definitions as well. And some of it's pretty mundane. Some of it I'll resist enumerating here. But the problem with success is fundamentally not just, what is it, but then of course, as you alluded, where in this journey are we going to plant a flag and say, hey, we're successful? Did we get the contract right? Did we get the RFP right? Did we get the contract right? Did we get the initial, do we get the right team on board? Were we successful there? Do we have, successful implementation, successful go live? And now that we're using it, are we being successful in meeting our business outcomes? It's the trick, to go back to my analogy of just two people trying to agree on success. The trick is to start with, what do we agree on? What are the two or three or four definitions? Unfortunately, the one most common is on time and on budget, and our friends, Thomas and he wrote about this. I wrote about this. That's not enough, ideally, because there's plenty of successful, there's plenty of projects that are on time and on budget, and the patient died on the operating table. And there's even more projects that blew away the budget, blew away the time frame, but really delivered incredible value. So we have to really drill very carefully into that. And I'll stop there, because we could just rant on that one for an hour.
Well, yeah. So let's do that. So
Okay.
with a project management background, as a project manager, you are definitely brought up to know you have to be on time and in budget in order to be successful. So I guess maybe that doesn't always mean that you're completely successful, but that is a measure of success, right?
It's a nice one to have. And it really starts with, so let's back up. Before you as a project manager tasked with on time, on budget, get this thing done, hopefully there was a very successful project plan. Hopefully you had the right people in the room sitting down and working out what you wanted to do. You have your stakeholders involved, not just your IT department. You have your best people involved, not just the people you could cram into the room for this particular meeting. And ideally your partner and your service partner, your vendor, have done the same thing. So right before the project manager, get dumped with this obligation, they better set you up right. Because most of the time, unfortunately, you probably have the scars to show it, you're set up for failure. And then it's like, good luck, and God forbid you turn that sucker in on time and on budget. That's a guarantee fail. Because you didn't, there's going to be so much change, so many change orders to get it right because it was set up wrong.
So what do you see as the different stages in the customer's journey where you can succeed or fail? It's starting to sound like, God, every time we turn around, we've got a point of failure. So which one of these are real points of failure, and which one of these are, gosh, it would be great if we could get that right, but if we don't, it's not a total loss?
I'm not sure there's a whole lot in the latter category, to be honest. I think that because you got to get the contract right? Let's start there. And part of it is that the impact of the contract can reverberate years and years later. I was asked to judge a contest. I'll try to tell a quick story. It was actually SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server. They were having a little event. They said, we want to judge like the best SQL Server implementation, the replacement project. And it turned out to be my local utility district was the winner. And they took this big mainframe ugly thing and they moved it over to this sleek little SQL Server thing, and they were getting an award. And I met them beforehand. I said, thank you as a ratepayer for doing this. This is great. And they said, oh my God, we almost got fired for this. I'm like, what? He goes, oh yeah, well, when we shifted this load over from the mainframe to SQL Server and technically we were paying 10 cents on the dollar or whatever to do that, IBM showed up and said, hey, you see this contract you signed 20 years ago? That guy who retired 15 years ago after he signed it? When you shift that load off, you fall below a certain threshold. Bingo, we kick your rates up. So they moved this thing off and they got to pay more money to do it than they saved. Define success. That was a huge failure. They literally said we almost lost our jobs over this. So it's there's a lot of moving parts here, and that's why I say let's find a couple that we can agree on. And I like to start with business outcomes. We have a business or a technological outcome we need to obtain. We need to, Jeff started talking about this in the beginning. Right? We need to deliver a product to the customer on time and on budget, with our margin intact, and our safety intact. That's our outcome. Let's fix that first. Or our outcome may simply be that we have a regulatory requirement for compliance that we're not meeting. That's a business. Let's agree that's success. How the hell do we get there? Maybe it doesn't matter. If you're an FDA, if you're in an FDA regulated company and you're required to do, your good manufacturing thing, and you fail, they shut your plant down. So success should come at any cost in that case. It's a hairball. I agree. That's what the fire extinguisher is for. Right? Put out the fires.
Looks like we got a comment from our friend Steve LeMay that fits right on top of what you said. When you talk about the, who all needs to be involved from top to bottom?
Well, thank you for that. My favorite, I love to sort of throw these aphorisms around, and my favorite one is it takes three to really screw up a project. The vendor, the partner, and the customer. And the reverse of that to this comment is you can better have the right commitment, not the, not this, frankly, the kind of half-ass commitment, not the, sell the A team and deliver the B team commitment. You got to have the right people involved, and you have to have the right people from the end user community too. That's the other consistent. Often, we run into big change management problems all the time with customer success because IT and an executive imposed a change on a end user community that's looking this going, who are the boneheads that came up with this nonsense? And so, management, people, communications, all this stuff is super, super important.
Yeah, I've seen some of this stuff go through, about the time I was, young and promotable to, bottom of the rung, sea level, for different trucking companies. It seemed like everywhere I went, we were going through, and I guess it was just the times, everybody was switching over from AS400 to some graphical system, some graphical routing system, one was proprietary. We switched to, Descartes Fleetwise, at one company, and then, at TMW for another one. But it seemed like it was just a natural trend. Everybody was switching from AS400 to some graphical. And when I was with Conway Freight, they were going to a proprietary system, and the people they hired to help design that, they required them to work in the field. And you're talking about software people work on the.
Oh, I think we might have lost Jeff.
He's getting that was getting good too.
Yeah.
Am I breaking up?
You're going to need to say that again, Jeff.
Yeah.
We required them to work in the field for 6 months as supervisors and operations managers on the dock, climbing through trailers just like we did. Understand exactly what happens when something goes wrong, when something doesn't show up. When a piece of freight and hand onto a trailer.
Genius. Yeah.
So and that went fairly smooth, especially with a company that large and dedicated. That was a big operation.
As you were telling that story, I'm looking around because I have somewhere here, and I can't see it, actually a printout from my local Ace Hardware when I ordered something online, and there was a huge delay, and it finally arrived. I went to pick it up, and the guy says, "You want the packing slip?" And I go, "No." And then he goes, "Okay." And he pulls out this big green striped piece of paper from an AS400 to go from the warehouse. And I'm like, no, I'll take that. Let me hang on to that. So I should have kept that one around as a prop too, because that worked until it didn't.
Everybody used to have AS400 mainframe. That's what you had. And
the workhorse.
If you knew the shortcut keys and you knew exactly what it's going to do, you could sit there and type your whole night's work in, run down to the Coke machine, get a Coke, come back, and that thing would still be blinking trying to catch it.
And those things, that's a great example because, that was a workhorse. It worked great. It delivered the goods, literally and figuratively. And then of course, I would say probably the systems you worked on ran into, on-demand online ordering like my Ace Hardware did, and suddenly that's not fast enough. That's not smart enough. And then you need a change management process. And hopefully when you do the RFP for that project, you and your buddies who've been, crawling in and out of those trailers are actually in the room, because otherwise they're going to get that wrong. We know they're going to get that wrong.
So, Josh, do you think there's a difference between customer and consumer success and how a company defines success? Is there a legitimate delineation?
Well, I hate to say it, to be really cynical, and let's just get in there. If you're a software company selling software, unfortunately, a lot of them, your definition of success is Wall Street gave you a pat on the back in the last quarterly call. And I've been looking at some of these quarterly calls that these big public companies are having, and they're reporting all kinds of numbers, and Wall Street's patting them on the back, and tech stocks are up from the last quarter, quite a number of them. Not a word is said about actual customer success. What they're really defining to Wall Street is sales success. And in that case, I hate to say it, and I'm going to be real cynical and say, for those vendors, the customer is Wall Street. The customer is the investors who need quarterly, something to cheer about every quarter. And that's not necessarily about customers being successful. That's just about, we made quota.
But it all ties together, right? I mean, if you
No.
don't have your investors investing in your company, you don't have the people to deliver what the customer wants. You don't have anybody there to measure the customer's success, give them what they're asking for. So are your investors in some way another stakeholder, another person who needs to be part of your definition of success?
Oh, I know, you're right. I mean, if you're going to be a publicly held company, you by law and by practice, you're going to have to, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders. That's maybe we should bring the shareholders into this equation of who needs to be involved. Because the problem with publicly traded companies is that that Wall Street wants quarterly results. And the difference between what you and I are, the two of you and I are doing right now in terms of defining success, we're not looking at success as something that happens every 3 months, because it can't, right? It's something you want real customer success in the enterprise software space. For the enterprise software customer, you got to have a different measuring stick. And so I want Wall Street to be involved for the reasons you just said, but they got to get off this 3 months gravy train, because it's just killing, it's killing productivity. It's killing the industry, literally.
It's an interesting balance.
At top level, we talk about silos and how they affect and sometimes negatively affect customer experience, customer success. But, it's just another example where you can have misalignment of goals.
Steve LeMay put a good comment up again. Brent, if you could throw that up on the screen. How often is the room where the decisions are made filled with people who have no idea what is going on?
That never happens.
Oh, no. Holy shit. Or I'm going to say worse than that. What about when the room is full of people who know what's going on and they're not telling? So I sat down with the service manager. I'm sorry, with the partner manager for a big project. His job was to get I almost said the vendor, the big 3-letter acronym vendor involved. And I had at the time proposed using a tool that I had developed, which was going to just test the teamwork in the project. How does the service provider and the end user team interact with each other? Are they working together? These two disparate teams as a single team. We can measure that. There was a way to measure it, and so that's a good early warning system. The project's going to go south if these teams, they at the end of the day, one team goes to one bar and sits there and bitches about the other ones, and across the street there's another bar full of the other guys bitching about the guys in the first bar, and now your project's going to go south. I said this to this manager, and he looked at me and says, "I don't need to know what the customer. You don't have to tell me what the customer says. I already know how the customer thinks about us." And I said, "Well, steering committee know that? Does your boss know that?" And he goes, that's not material. We just need to get the project done."
It's a little short-sighted, right?
A little too common, did you say? A little standard operating procedure?
I said short-sighted, but they could
Yeah.
probably be
Again, you've been
interchangeable.
there. Right?
Yeah.
This communication line gets twisted into something, something that makes everybody feel happy until, at some point, pardon my French, the shit hits the fan. And now you're in deep trouble. Now it's 3, 4, 5 months down the road, and you have missed every real meaningful milestone, and the customer is ready to kill somebody.
Yeah.
And usually the wrong person. Usually they're not even looking in the mirror when they're pulling the trigger, which they should be doing that a little bit too. They just want to find. Usually it's a vendor to throw under the bus. Service provider, walks away because they're tough Teflon for whatever reason.
Jody Spencer put a good comment in the chat. Customer
Yeah.
success does not always equal company success. And when that's the case, at what point do you draw the line? How do you balance that? In addition to now, we're talking about investor success and C-suite success. And how do you draw that line, Josh?
I draw the line. I'm sorry, I'm biased. It's the customer, and the customer's customer. So I don't really, I'm sorry, but Jody, go on. Keep hitting us with those comments.
When does it matter?
I'm sorry.
If Jody, her next question, well, whose success matters more? And to build on that, I was about to say, when does on time and under budget? When is that detrimental to the overall outcome?
Very simple. When you spec
and
the
how
project.
often? I know it
you
happens.
Spec the project wrong. You got I've seen this. I'm sure we've all seen this, right? Management says we got a budget here. That's all we can do. But this is what we need to do. And then you get the budget, you start the project. It turns out you really did need to do that stuff. You really didn't have the project spec'd out right. Now you're doing change order after change order. People are gunning for each other in the halls, and you just shot the budget to hell. But you had no choice because you need to be successful at some basic level.
What about the other side of the coin where the company goes all in to make the customer happy, right? A lot of companies don't just do COTS implementations, right? Everything is a unicorn. So you bust your budget, oh yes, give them whatever they need. We're going to make them successful. We're going to make them happy, whatever the customer needs. And then you find out that, wow, so, we had good sales, but our revenue really took a hit because now we're spending so much on implementations, making the customer happy.
Tough.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I'll cry me a river. I've been a sole proprietor for 30 some years. I don't have the option of walking away from an unsuccessful customer. I'm sorry. Nobody should. If you, I gotta keep my mouth. If you screwed up your revenue model because you're helping your customers too much to be successful, God bless you. Your heart is in the right place. Get your wallet over there too. But don't break the model. Skimping on customer success to make money, that's, again, there are plenty of people want to do that for a living. That's Gordon Gekko, times 10 million, but I'm not there to preach that one. No, make the customer successful.
Is this a good time to pull up your chart, Josh?
Yeah. When's that real moment of customer success? How do you measure whether or not you're successful?
Well, yeah, there we go.
With your customers.
So this is my favorite. This is a chart. Let me explain this chart first, and then we can start digging in that. So I've been collecting this data set for a while, and I'd like to just throw it in a chart. Basically, the brown and the gray lines are the growth in IT spending. The gray one is the international spending, worldwide spending. The brown one is U.S. based. This is data taken from the big analyst firms. They publish this stuff every year. The blue line is the growth in productivity as measured by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's a combination of capital and labor productivity. And the point of this chart is we're growing IT spending right and left all the time. Some of these, we can't see the y-axis, but it's basically, we're talking about up to 10+% growth in some of these peaks. And there is that blue line hovering around 2% at best, sometimes zero something. So the gap, that gap is, I'm going to call that, let's call it the spending productivity gap or the customer success gap, because it's pretty obvious if you're inside that gap, you're spending money and you're not getting your money's worth. That's a pretty basic problem. And the trick is, we all know companies that beat that. The trick for us as consultants, as practitioners, is to be leading the charge to break that model every time. To say, if we're growing spending, we're growing productivity, we're growing success. I think that this, to me, and this is, you brought up Michael Porter, 1985. Well, 1986, I think it was. Robert Solow, Nobel Prize-winning economist, said infamously, you've got, you can see the impact of technology everywhere, but in the productivity statistics. That was called the Solow paradox. And as this chart shows, it's still happening today. It hasn't gone away. There's a question there, Jeff, right? I didn't necessarily answer it, but.
Well, I mean, besides just the cost benefit or the bang for the buck, I mean, yeah, you want to make sure you're looking at your return on capital investment and your return on assets, because it's a good measure of where you are operationally. Did you help? But you can make those numbers look any way you want. I mean, how do you know what's getting you there? I mean, how do you know if you've made that customer journey better? Or easier? How do you know or what's the difference between customer experience and customer, success? Satisfaction. I mean,
clearly, net promoter score is not the answer either, unfortunately.
Oh, no, but no.
Yeah, right. But that's another one we sort of lean on. We're net promoter. And this stuff is, we are sort of peeling. We're not peeling away an onion. We're peeling away a hairball, and which is a slightly more grotesque kind of image. But this is not easy stuff. So again, I lean on let's find something we can agree on. Do we have a business outcome that we need to obtain? Do we have something? Again, do we need to be selling? Do we need to deliver? So let's take a pharma example, because a lot of supply chain, a lot of your friends in supply chain world today, the VP supply chain, will tell me my job is to deliver product to the customer. I had this conversation, this light bulb came on talking to a pharmaceutical supply chain executive, said, my job is to get that little bag of medicine to that infusion center for that cancer patient on time, in the right formulation, at the, with the right everything, not just because I make money doing it, but frankly, that's why I do this job, because I believe in that, which is a nice thing to have. So there's a measure of success right there. Did that show up? What is your on-time rate? What does your quality rate look like? What is, ultimately there's some ways in which we can agree that that's an outcome. Let's do that. Now if you're the problem with that, and both the problem and potentially the solution, lies in the fact that that's not something that just the VP of supply chain controls. And therefore, that RFP for updating my supply chain planning and execution system in order to let the VP have that metric on her list involves a whole lot of other stakeholders. And this is now another part of the hairball, is that the reason we have that productivity problem that I showed in that gap is that we've been treating these as siloed problems. To get product to that infusion center on time is not just the supply chain responsibility at all. In fact, but if you only sell a supply chain planning and execution system to solve that problem and think you've done it, if that's your measure of success, we got the right system in. Did that really work? What happened to materials management at the manufacturing plant when you got the wrong? Somebody screwed that up because that system was too old, and you had to throw the batch away. What happened to your logistics buddies? XPO. When goddamn boat got jammed into the Suez Canal. We also have to look at these processes, these end-to-end processes, much more holistically, and say that if we're going to define success, we have to define enterprise success, not just project success, not just silo success, not just, and that now we're in another complete mess, which is that vendors sell silos, customers consume and implement silos, and then we have this other breakdown where, whoops, we didn't actually achieve the business goal because we didn't have the process right.
That's kind of where it gets back to what I brought up at the beginning. That arrow points to an end consumer at some point for anything you do. So I mean, you talk about net promoter score. Yeah, well, the main thing I have against that is you're taking one measure of one facet of a global construct. Loyalty is still important, and and where does churn come in? Where does your customers churn? Where we hadn't heard, since the pandemic, people assume, you just have churn, this and that and the other. Or our customers just going to understand that there's supply chain issues. Well, we're kind of coming out of that, and depending on how you position yourself, I'm talking about in the consumer's mind. How you position yourself. If you're a premium service provider, a premium product provider, they're going to be a little bit less forgiving now than they were a year and a half ago when you fail them, because you're still charging that money.
And if you failed them by delivering a car that needs to be recalled because the brake linings were defective, you've really screwed it up. And there's no, that we can't turn around and say, well, I had a supply chain problem. Sorry. That's the wrong number. So this stuff gets, that's why I'm sort of going back to this whole more holistic view. Oh God. Well, Jody's got something to say. Wait a minute.
And this goes to the next question we were going to talk about, which is who is responsible. If you need one throat to choke, pardon my reference, but if you need one throat to choke, who has ultimate responsibility for the customer's success? Back to your pharmaceutical example.
Well, I would hope the CEO. And literally, I mean, this, you want to have real leadership in this domain. You've got to start way at the top. And the idea that we're doing these complex transformations, that we're doing these big budget IT projects, and the C level is absent from the day to day is I think a luxury no one can afford anymore. And that in particular, because of the criticality. I mean, supply chain is a particularly important one because, of course, everything ultimately is in a supply chain. It's hard to find an industry that doesn't. If you're making something, you're in a supply chain. And this is a conversation I swear I'm having every time I turn around, whether it's with a friend who can't get something or a person who's in the industry. We're reconfiguring the whole concept of supply chain. The whole concept of just-in-time and lean is shifting into this new notion of resiliency. We're onshoring when we used to offshore. This is a huge change in how everybody does business. Everybody does business. And I don't care what industry you're in, even in the service sector, that those changes are happening, in terms of, just where are your people? How are they interacting? So the C-level that's absent from this enormous transformation in the global economy is the C-level that frankly needs to be shit-canned and find someone else to do the job, because you can't just dump this on your employees. Dumping on employees. We're not going to talk about that guy. But
so Steve had a really good comment. How do you set up goals that lead to customer success and involve the entire value chain?
Damn, I'm getting out the fire extinguisher for that. That's a hot question. Thanks, Steve. Throw me a bone. I think that the goals again have to go back to the outcomes. that you're so right. I've just painted a super big picture that involves everybody, and now we have to boil it down into something discrete that we can actually work with. And I think that's maybe where Steve is coming from there. And so, I think that I'm trying to think of like, sometimes a project is really about how do I, so you break it apart, right? So I got to get that pharmaceutical to that customer, that person in the infusion center. Let's do. We can't do. We're not going to break it all apart and start all over. That's impossible. So how do one of the goals for customer success in that part might be we're going to do a better job with supplier management. Let's find the biggest problem in our supply chain right now to getting that product. Maybe it's a quality problem. Okay, maybe we've got that quality problem down, and we're doing it. We're doing shipping it right. We're just shipping the thing that's not manufactured right. So I think part of it is goal setting really involves, as much as everyone wants to do global, intergalactic, perpetual digital transformation, what we really need to do is say, let's find a discrete problem we can solve today, and then solve the next one tomorrow, and the next one, and the next one. Sometimes that involves some forward planning. I've got an outdated ERP system. I'm still running on AS400s in my warehouse. Maybe that's my project. So part of it is taking the holistic view of what are all the ultimate goals, and then deconstructing that into things I can do that I can get done today. And in fact, sometimes that means I'm going to bring on some automation vendor who's going to help me just stitch some stuff together that's old and nasty. Maybe there's some AS400 in there, but I'm going to fix that problem with a Band-Aid until I can fix the bigger problem. Is that we've got to move 300 warehouses to a modern ERP system. So I think I might have punted successfully on answering Steve's question. I don't know. You tell me.
Well, he asked one earlier too that I thought was really interesting. We had your chart up there, and the divergence and the gap between the productivity and the spending, right? And Steve said, what role will AI applications play in future growth? Is that in the wasted spending part of your chart?
I'm sorry, Steve. I'm going to say this. I hate to say there's a simple technological answer to a complex business problem. So, AI, I've been around a long time. We've been talking about artificial intelligence and genuine stupidity for ages. Sometimes they go hand in hand. Certainly lately, how AI is marketed looks genuinely stupid to me. And with all due respect, the problem of saying I can solve everything with AI, what was the billboard? I was driving home the other night, and the billboard said, you can be compliant. You can respond to compliance requirements using our AI. Really? You're going to do RoHS compliance by letting some AI bot define it? You're going to do FDA good manufacturing protocol compliance by letting them AI bot? No. So I think the question about what role does AI have really starts with what role does technology? Where do I have a technological problem I need to solve versus where do I have a people problem to solve? Maybe that's the first starting point. Before I get to buzzword compliance with marketing's latest doodad, let's talk about the difference between people and a billboard. I drive in cars. Yeah. Dude, I had to drive my car. I was coming back from a concert. I was driving over the Bay Bridge from San Francisco.
Just to clarify for all the friendly listeners out there, for those of you that didn't know, Steve LeMay actually taught me supply chain management as an undergraduate at Mississippi State. So I feel like he's putting me on the hot seat every bit as much as he is you. And I kind of feel like I'm in the middle of a test I didn't study for,
And we should say that Steve LeMay was only about 22 when you were in his class, right, Jeff? I mean, just to Let's soften that blow for Steve.
Dang, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the comments here. He's just setting us up for failure, right?
He's got
some suppliers have multiple customers and multiple supply chains. How do you reconcile potentially conflicting goals? Hell yeah.
You got 30 seconds. Can you answer that one in 30 seconds, Josh?
Yeah, take Steve. Steve has a great class on this. He teaches us at what school is that? You want me to plug your class? No, this is complicated. I mean, from a supplier standpoint, we could do 2 hours on suppliers, because suppliers are really, are tugged in multiple directions simultaneously. I'm a big proponent of the concept of a business network, which is really a many to many network where I get to comply once, I get to log in once, I get to be a supplier, because I'm selling components that you put in a washing machine, you put in a 737, that's not impossible. In fact, that's very likely. Those are completely different supply chains. So I like the idea of a business network. I like the idea of being able to, as a supplier, say, here I am. Ideally, this is advantageous to me. I'm not just here to have my margins trimmed down by a bunch of OEMs using a network to gang up on me. But the flip side is that's a really good way, I think, from a supplier standpoint, to be able to do that.
Yeah, but what he's asking, consider co-opetition, where somebody like Johnson Controls may be a tier 1 supplier for Visteon or Delphi in one project and competing with them for the same contract the next state over.
Well, it sounds like we're going to have to do this again, because we still have a lot of stuff to talk about. And
oh my God. Well, I just want to say, I just came from a supply chain conference a couple of weeks ago, not really supply chain, excuse me. And what was fascinating is talking to some of these mid-tier suppliers at this conference, and they were saying, the person in the catbird seat is that little supplier who's selling me a part. They know they can sell. There's no shortage of buyers. They have the constrained part that's for 5 supply chains. They can command whatever the price they want. They're in the catbird seat. I'm not. The OEM isn't even. They're the ones controlling the supply chain. They've got this one little thing that that they know no one has, and they've got it. So it's an even more complicated program. You're right, and we can go down this rabbit hole. It's not a rabbit hole. We can go down this.
Yeah, we can make a whole topic on this, and we may do it after the first of the year.
Bring it on, man. I love
you may need 2 fire extinguishers for the next episode, though.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna let Steve LeMay host it with Jeff.
Yeah, right, right. No, we'll put Steve in the hot seat.
Yeah, this has been fascinating. We certainly appreciate you. I'm being told by the boss man here that we're running close to being out of time. So, by virtue of that, you have survived the hot seat today. So we certainly appreciate you being on, and like I said, we may bring you back for that other discussions, any of those other discussions that we barely dipped into and wanted to go further into.
There's a lot of good. Yeah, we didn't even get to how to simplify the goals, or I have my little checklist here. What are the project management skills you need to get this done right? What do you deal with the partners? Yeah, we got
lots more to talk about.
Anytime, you let me know. Wind me up.
All right.
So, if you think you have what it takes to be in the hot seat, or if you can better define customer success, if you think you have a better idea of how to manage these goals, let us know. We'll be happy to have you in the hot seat at a future date. And that is all the time we have for In the Hot Seat episode for today. Again, thank you, Josh, for being on here. We certainly enjoyed it. I'm Jeff Risher.
And I'm Kristy Tupper. Tune in next time for different faces, different topics, different perspectives, more fire extinguishers, as we put someone else in the hot seat. And the bar has been set with Josh's fire extinguisher. Thanks
Thank you very much,
guys.
Everyone. Have a great week.
You too.